Liam sat in his office, fidgeting with papers. The workday was coming to an end, but his thoughts were restless. He thought again and again about Ava, about her coldness, about the way she kept her distance, even though there was more than just a business relationship between them. He knew her gaze was frankly wary, and her reactions reserved and suspicious. But despite this, he was drawn to her. In their first meeting a few days ago, he had noticed how she had instantly assessed him, as if she had immediately realized what lay behind his calm exterior. She was smart, and as it turned out, not the type to open up easily either. He respected her for that, but at the same time he couldn't help but feel that her inner world was far more complex than she let on. When Ava offered to meet to discuss the project, Liam couldn't refuse. He knew full well that her refusal to meet in person was already familiar, but this meeting was different. He sensed she was ready to finally reveal something. In the back of his mind, he knew it wasn't going to be just a business conversation. And so, the next day, they met in the park. The time was late, and the park was starting to empty of people, but the evening silence seemed to give their meeting a special significance. Ava stood at the main gate, her silhouette looming against the sunset. She wore a light-colored coat, her hair waving in the breeze, and her gaze was directed somewhere in the distance. It was as if she didn't notice him approaching. "Hi," Liam said, his voice breaking the silence. She turned around and immediately tensed slightly when she saw him, but her face didn't change. "Hi, Liam," she replied without smiling. She always remained reserved, but today there was something especially cold in her manner. They began a leisurely walk, and there was something lingering in her silence. Ava was in no hurry to speak, and Liam didn't insist. They walked along the alleys, drowning in the shade of the trees that stood along the paths. In this park, among the green alleys, the secluded benches, and the silence, they could talk without prying eyes and rumors, but Ava remained as closed off as ever. "I like it here," she said after a few moments of silence, almost with surprise, as if she hadn't expected to say it. "Why did we come here?" "Because I wanted to talk to you," Liam answered. He knew Ava valued sincerity, and he wasn't going to hide his intentions. "About the project, but more than that. I think we should be honest with each other." Ava paused and looked at him. There was something wary in her eyes, as if she was choosing her words carefully. "Do you really think it's okay to be honest? Or is this just a way of saying you want me to tell you about myself?" Her voice came through with a slight irony, but there was something painful in her intonation. Liam thought for a moment, trying to figure out the best way to answer. He was being honest with himself, and his candor wasn't a way to get her to open up. But he felt that perhaps his words might have sounded different to Ava. "I think it's worth at least trying. We all go through difficult moments, and sometimes it's important to have someone to listen," he said, looking at her carefully. Ava looked at him again, but her gaze was softer. She sighed quietly and continued walking. "You're right," she said, and there was weariness in her voice. "But I'm not sure I'm ready to open up. I'm not good at opening up to people that easily, Liam." He saw her face darken slightly, and he realized that her reticence hid not only fear, but real pain. "There's no need to rush. I'm not going to insist," he said, trying not to push. "But if you ever want to talk, I'll be here for you." Ava stopped and looked at him with such intensity that Liam felt her words penetrating him. She was so real in her restraint that he couldn't help but have the deepest respect for her. He saw a shadow of pain in her eyes, a shadow of some past she wasn't ready to discuss. "Perhaps done wrong. And now that I'm trying to meet someone again, I can't shake the feeling that I shouldn't open my heart again." Liam felt his chest tighten at those words. He could see how her face darkened, how each phrase echoed in her heart with the pain she'd hidden for so long. "You don't have to suffer again, Ava. I'm not going to make you forget the past, but you can trust me." "I won't hurt you," he said, though he sensed that her wounds were much deeper than he could have imagined. Ava raised her eyes and looked at him, as if trying to see if he was sincere. She was silent for a moment, as if undeciding what to say. "I want to believe you, Liam. I want to believe that it's possible to feel something again, but I'm not sure I'm ready. The fear of losing everything again is destroying me. I don't want to be hurt. I don't want to be alone again." You won't be alone, Ava. I'll be here for you. And if you ever decide to trust me, I'll be here, he said with deep confidence. Ava looked at his hand that held hers gently, and her eyes filled with tears. She said nothing in response, but there was a hint of hope in her gaze. Hope that maybe things could still be fixed. It had been a few weeks since that candid encounter in the cafe. Ava seemed to relax a little when they dated, but her inner world continued to remain on lockdown. Liam felt that her every look, every word was always kind of at a distance, as if she was trying to avoid anything important to say. Despite her outward restraint, he could see her trusting him more and more, her heart opening up, but her past wouldn't let go. Liam, though he didn't want to rush things, began to sense that he was increasingly seeing a shadow of desperation in her eyes, a distinct desire to forget and start living again, but he wasn't sure that was possible. One day when they met again to work on a project, he noticed that Ava was absorbed in her own thoughts. She was nervously going through papers, not paying attention to what was going on around her. This day wasn't special, there wasn't anything that would cause her to worry, but he sensed that she was becoming more withdrawn with every breath she took. When they left the office, he suggested a walk to discuss the details of the job. Ava agreed, though her eyes were dim and she didn't even try to hide her fatigue. They walked down the street, each absorbed in their own thoughts, but the atmosphere between them was strangely tense. "There's something off about you," Liam said, his voice soft but insistent. "I've noticed you've shut down again. What's going on, Ava?" She stopped and, without turning around, replied, "It has nothing to do with you. It's just that sometimes I can't help but think about my past. And it's destroying me, Liam. I can't stop worrying about what happened. And the more I try to live, the more I feel like I can't." Her words sounded quiet, but there was such power in them, such pain, that Liam felt his chest tighten. He stepped closer to her, but he didn't know how to help. He could see that her inner world was in a terrible state, and though she outwardly seemed confident, there was an unimaginable anxiety lurking behind her walls. "Ava, you don't have to carry this alone," he said finally, putting his hand on her shoulder. "You don't have to be strong all the time. It's not your burden." Ava slowly turned towards him and her eyes met his gaze. She saw understanding in his eyes, but also concern. Liam wasn't demanding anything from her. He wouldn't be with her if he didn't genuinely want to understand her pain and support her, not force her to open up. But this time her defenses were starting to crack. "I don't want to be weak," she replied, her voice almost imperceptible, tinged with pain. She tried to hide her excitement. "I thought we could talk about something else today. About us." He nodded, realizing that the conversation really wasn't going to be about work. He sensed that the moment was important to her, but it was important to him too. He didn't know exactly what she wanted to say yet, but he was ready to hear her out. They sat down at the table, and while she poured the wine, their conversation moved smoothly from the usual topics to more personal ones. Ava was as reserved as ever, but there was a warmth in her voice, a willingness to open up. She told me how much she was worried about her future, how she could not forgive herself for the mistakes of the past, for the shattered dreams, and how, despite all her fears, she was beginning to feel less afraid with him by her side. "Liam, you've become more than just a coworker to me," she said, her voice barely audible. "I didn't know you could change my life like this. I thought I'd be alone, that I'd never be able to trust again. But you showed me that something more was possible." Liam looked at her and felt something in his chest twitch. He knew this girl had been through pain and loss, but now she was genuinely longing for a new beginning. He couldn't move her to something more, but he knew she needed time and he was willing to give it to her. "Ava, I'm not asking you to forget everything that happened," he said, his voice quiet but full of confidence. "I want you to know that you're not alone in this. I'll be there for you, even if you're not ready to fully open up. But please don't close yourself off. You deserve to be happy." She sighed as she looked into his eyes and felt her heart begin to let go a little bit of all those old resentments and fears she'd been carrying around for so long. Liam was there for her, and his words, his concern, his support meant more to her than she could have ever imagined. She felt her closed world begin to open up, how this evening was the moment she began to learn to believe. "I'm afraid," she said, not hiding her vulnerability. "I'm afraid it will be too fast. But I need to learn to believe. And you're helping me. And I want to try, Liam. I can't promise it'll be easy, but I'm willing to work at it." Liam took her hand and looked at her in a way she'd never felt seen before. He wasn't trying to jump to conclusions, he wasn't rushing her, but he was willing to support her every step of the way. "I don't expect you to change quickly. It's important to me that you're happy and feel safe. And if you need time, I'll be here for you. I'm not going anywhere." After dinner, they sat for a long time, talking and laughing. All the doubts that had recently been tearing at her heart began to dissolve in that moment. Ava felt that for the first time in a long time she could be herself, without fear or looking back at the past. As dinner came to an end, she walked Liam to the door, and it seemed like the whole world stood still for a moment, waiting to see what would happen next. Ava, with slight excitement, hugged him. "Thank you," she said, "for everything." "This is just the beginning, Ava," he replied, hugging her back, feeling her body relax in his arms. She didn't know what would happen next. But she did know one thing: Liam had become the man she was willing to go through anything with. And this was the most important step of her life. It had been a few weeks since the night Ava and Liam had shared their revelations, and their relationship had become a little more open and trusting. Still, for Ava, every morning was like a battle with her own fears. She couldn't immediately forget everything she'd experienced, and even though she wanted to move forward, her past kept coming back like a haunting nightmare, making her question whether it was worth opening up to someone so completely. She tried to remain calm, but she could feel the internal tension slowly building up. Liam was trying to be supportive, of course, but she felt like he was having a hard time understanding the depth of her fear, too. Not because he didn't want to, but because he couldn't relive the horror she'd endured. And there was something wistful about it that made her feel lonely even in his presence. One evening, as they sat in her apartment again, enjoying the quiet atmosphere, Liam noticed that Ava was quieter than usual. He didn't want to pressure her, but he felt as if she was closed off from him, as if she were shutting off another wall. "Ava, are you okay?" he asked gently, trying to break the silence. She looked up slowly and seemed to be struggling to find the words to answer. She had long ago gotten used to keeping all her feelings to herself, and now it was harder than she thought it would be. "It's just, sometimes I feel like I don't deserve this happiness," she replied, her voice trembling. "I don't deserve to be with someone who only sees the good in me. It's too easy, too fast. I'm afraid that if I reveal the whole truth to you, you'll walk away." Liam fell silent. His heart clenched with pain. He could feel how much these thoughts were tormenting her. He watched her eyes fill with anxiety as she sank back into the dark waters of her past, and he knew it was time for her to open up to him for real. "Ava, you don't have to be afraid. You don't have to carry this weight alone," he said, approaching her gently. "I am willing to listen. I'm not going to judge you. I want to understand what you've been through." She closed her eyes, trying to gather her thoughts. She was ready to tell him. And at the same time, she wasn't ready. Because her story wasn't just a tale of pain. It was more than that. It was something that changed her forever. "I don't know where to start," she said, sighing heavily. "It wasn't the way I thought it would be. I always thought my life would be different. I believed in love, in family. But it all fell apart when I realized that he wasn't who I thought he was." Liam sat down next to her and remained silent, giving her time. He knew Ava needed not only his support, but the space to tell her story. He couldn't rush the process, but he was willing to listen to her, no matter how hard the truth was. "He was my rock, my whole life," Ava continued, her voice calm but with an undercurrent of pain. "We made plans, thought about the future. I believed it was forever. But one day I discovered that he was cheating on me. It wasn't just a mistake, not just a moment of weakness. He'd been lying to me for years. He'd built a whole life that had no room for me." Liam felt his chest tighten as she said those words. He didn't know exactly what Ava had gone through, but it was clear to him now how much it had changed her. All her confidence, all her faith in love had been shattered. I couldn't believe it, she continued, her eyes filling with tears. I felt like I was losing everything, and I couldn't find the strength to forgive him. I couldn't understand how he could do that. I lost myself in that pain, and I still can't believe it happened. It was like a betrayal that I couldn't get over. And now I'm afraid I'll be betrayed again. Liam was silent, letting her express all the pain. He didn't try to comfort her, didn't try to tell her that everything would be okay, because he knew that such words wouldn't help in this moment. He was just there for her, and that was enough for her. And now that I'm trying to be with you, I can't shake these fears, Ava said, her voice quiet again. I'm afraid that if I start trusting you, you'll leave too. I'm afraid that history will repeat itself. I don't want to go through that pain again. But I want to believe in us, Liam. I want to learn to love again. Liam took her hand. His palm was warm and there was so much care and strength in the gesture that Ava felt her tension ease a little. He didn't know what to say, but he knew one thing. She was ready to open up to him, and this was the most important step. Ava, I can't change your past, but I want to be here for you, he said quietly. You're not alone. You're not alone in this, and I promise I won't leave. I'll be with you no matter what. We'll move together, one step at a time. Ava looked up at him, and there was a spark of hope in her eyes. She didn't know what would happen next, but now, in this moment, she felt that maybe she wouldn't lose herself. Maybe she would be able to trust again. Thank you, she said, her voice barely audible. Thank you for being here. I didn't know I needed it so much. Liam smiled quietly and hugged her. He knew their journey was just beginning, but he was ready to walk it with her, despite all the fears and pains of the past. In his arms, Ava felt that maybe she could be happy again. And that was the beginning of her new journey. After that night, when Ava shared her fears and worries candidly with Liam, her world slowly began to change. She realized that trust wasn't an instant process. It was a slow and painful journey for her, but at the same time, it was the only one possible. With each day she spent with Liam, she felt more and more that her past didn't have to determine her future. He was there for her, and that already meant a lot. With each step, she began to feel the weight that used to weigh on her heart lessen little by little. Her past was still a part of her, but now it wasn't dictating how she lived her life. Liam, by his presence, gave her the reassurance that she wasn't alone. He didn't ask her to forget everything that had happened, he didn't rush her, he was just there for her. Ava woke up one morning with the feeling that a change was finally coming in her life. Not global, not instantaneous, but she felt like she wasn't just letting go of the past, she was learning to live in the here and now. She realized that she shouldn't let her fears drive her decisions. She had someone in her life who accepted her for who she was. And that was already a big accomplishment. Liam took his time, didn't push her, and it was the right thing to do. He continued to show care and attention, but he remained patient. He understood that Ava needed time to learn to believe in love again in relationships. But he had no doubt that they could walk this path together. She seemed incredibly strong to him, despite all her vulnerability. And he couldn't afford to let her go. How are you today? He asked her one morning when they met outside the cafe they frequented, where they had started to spend more time together. He noticed how she had become a little calmer, how her face now didn't reflect the constant tension like it used to. Ava smiled, but her smile was genuine, without the stiffness of before. I feel better, she said, picking her words. I still can't say that I'm completely forgetting what happened, but I realize that I can't keep living in that past. It's not just going to be a general we can, it's going to be step by step. He took her hand and said confidently, I know. And I'll be with you, every step of the way, no matter how long it takes. She nodded, and his words warmed her like sunshine on a cold day. When he was around, she felt safe. When her thoughts began to sink back into the darkness of doubt and fear, his presence became a light to her. It wasn't an instant process, but every day she believed more and more that they could be happy. Meanwhile, Ava began to trust Liam more, and they began to share even the smallest moments of their day. Their communication became a deeper and more fulfilling part of their lives. Sometimes she told him about her worries, and sometimes she just kept quiet, enjoying having him around. One evening, as they strolled through the park and the evening sky transitioned smoothly into dark colors, Ava felt that now was the time. They stopped at a bench, and she looked at Liam with a calmness she'd never felt before. "You know, I think I'm finally ready to take a step forward," she said quietly. "Not just in my relationship with you, but in my life in general. I want to believe that everything isn't for nothing. That everything I've been through can be the foundation for becoming stronger, not broken." Liam looked at her carefully, his eyes full of sincerity and softness. "Ava, you're already strong. You've been through more than most could handle, and all of this has only made you stronger. But I want you to know that you don't have to be strong all the time. You can be vulnerable, you can let yourself make mistakes, and I will be there for you. I'll be there for you in every moment." Ava felt a heavy sigh come out of her chest. He didn't demand anything from her except that she be herself. In that moment, she felt unprecedented relief. "I'm ready, Liam," she said, her voice full of a confidence she hadn't realized herself yet. "Ready to move forward. Even if it's not going to be easy. Ready to be with you, to open up and learn to trust. I won't hide in the past, I'll look to the future." He hugged her, and that hug was filled with not only love, but pride for her. He knew that this journey would not be easy, but he was sure that together they could make it through. Ava began to believe in herself, and that was the most important step. As time went on, their relationship grew stronger and stronger. Ava stopped being afraid to step into the future. She couldn't forget what had happened, but now she knew how to look at it from a different perspective. And that was the real healing. Liam was there for her, and her heart was slowly starting to let go of the pain. Her life wasn't the same anymore, but she didn't feel lost anymore. She had learned to forgive and let go, not for the sake of others, but for herself. In this new world, full of possibility and hope, she was ready to love again. And with Liam by her side, she felt like her life was just beginning.